Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Krajewski from Steelo. And also, you have a new company, Michael. What's the name of your new company you just set up?
Workshield.
Workshield, excellent. Michael, we've been obviously working together for a while and got to know a bit about your business, but it would be great just to have an introduction. Just tell us a bit about yourself and your businesses, or your businesses. That'd be fantastic.
So predominantly we in the steel business, so we fabricate steel, although we are known in the industry as the innovators, because ever since I started over 10 years ago, I could see the niche being that the steel industry was way outdated. And the fact that I was aware of new technology, and when I came across this old industry, I was like, wow, this is just an area full of opportunities, and that sort of motto stays, well, carrying on until this day. Also, thanks to working with you, we've learned that actually it's not only about manufacturing steel, it is about our core strengths, and that is delivering a reliable service. So that's why now, when there was a need for it, we managed to pivot into plastics, and we are now actually primed for pivoting into anything else, as long as it's to do with providing a quality service and combined with manufacturing.
And you and most of your team are originally from Poland. How did you get to having a business based here in London?
Well, long story cut short, I always wanted to join the army as an officer, but because I was born in South Africa, I had dual nationality, and I was not allowed in the Polish army. And I was like, well, oh my God, what do I do next? So I decided, well, I'm going to go to the UK. I graduated as an engineer, so I found a job here as an engineer. And then that's how I stumbled across steel, because the company I worked for used to do everything. Basically, the directors could not say no to any inquiry. So we were doing glass, plastic, timber, steel, you name it, we did it. And when I came across steel, I was like, wow, this is like proper engineering. It's very simple, but it's also quite demanding, because every single beam is different. And I was shocked when I could see people scribing manually, measuring with a tape measure, scribing, punching, drilling with a hand drill. And I was still focused on the army, but plan B was to set up my own business. And I knew straight away that it will be in the steel industry. The other thing that I've learned about myself was that I like when things happen quickly, but I'm not really good at fine-tuning details. And steel is exactly that. You start today with a blank piece of paper, and in 2 weeks' time, the structure's there, and we can move on to the next idea. And when scaling up, obviously the same happens with a business. I like to start businesses, get them to work on themselves, so I don't have to sort of be involved in the nitty-gritty, and then leave that and focus on something else. So yeah, that's how I got into business, because I was rejected again with my application for the army. So I thought, okay, well, now I'm just sort of putting into action my plan B, which was starting the business.
Yeah, and when you first started, you used the great methodology from the EMyth. How did that work for you?
Yeah, it was great, although it took me 3 years before I realized how deep of a problem I was. Obviously, I started the way many business owners start, is I am the specialist and I will do everything. So that's how it started. I first rented out a small office in Hammersmith in London. The idea was to actually be a middleman and source projects in London, outsource fabrication somewhere up north, because it was relatively cheaper, or cheap down there, and then just manage logistics of transportation and also installation. But that did not work out whatsoever, because it was in the middle of the previous recession. And I quickly learned that actually no one is going to pay a deposit to a company that's only 3 weeks old. So I quickly had to pivot back then. And actually I started doing the things that I didn't want to do, which were very small projects. So I had to quickly rent out a small garage, which was the size of probably this office behind me. And then, yeah, I started working. Although I don't know, I'm not a welder. I'm more of an engineer, so I manage everything, and I only got some guys to come in the evening to do some welding, and that is how it all started. And then I basically fall into the trap, as many business owners do. They start building a business around themselves. So I am the decision maker, and I tell my people what to do. And slowly, gradually, we started growing. And then roughly in around 2012, I just had enough. I was depressed. I was working crazy hours. I stopped running. I stopped cycling. I stopped meeting friends. I was working 7 days a week for endless hours. And it's typical for depression, where you are very unproductive, yet you feel guilty when you get out of the office at a normal hour. So if I forced myself out at 5 p.m., I just could not stand the fact I just felt I'm a lazy guy. I'm not doing what I should be doing. The business is failing or not growing because I'm sitting at home rather than growing the business. So you fall into the trap of promising yourself you'll work harder the following day. So you stay longer, and then you're tired. So you stop working. You think, okay, I'll make it up in the morning. So you come back earlier, 6 a.m. Then you're tired. So you think I've got the whole day ahead of me. So I might as well just leave that for later. And again, you push things forward, and yeah, productivity is terrible. And that is when I was in such a low where if I found anyone who wanted to take on my business, I would pay them to take it from me. That is also when I learned that money doesn't make you happy, because the money was good, I must admit, but I was a walking wreck. It was just a shade of me rather than myself. So I started digging, and it was quite funny because I went to a Barclays event at Twickenham Stadium, and I met a person I knew before, a person I actually knew from the Richmond Park committee, because I was part of it as a frequent user. And I always perceived him as a grumpy old Italian guy. But then we started chatting over a glass of wine. And I explained to him, look, I've started this business. I only employ a few people. I'm working crazy hours. I can't grow. And it's just terrible. And he then said, well, have you read the book, The EMyth? I was like, no. And funny enough, I had that book on my shelf at home. And once I started reading it, I just could not stop. I just literally just read it overnight. And for me, all-nighters were just so common. So it's just like the next one night won't change anything. And that is when I realized that actually my biggest mistake was building a business around me rather than sort of building a business that works without the owner.
Yeah, yeah. And then you sort of went through the EMyth and got to that place where hopefully the business started to work without you. And then when we met, I think in Denver a couple of years ago, and we started talking obviously about moving from maybe a small business, transitioning from a small business mindset as well to the skill sets and the tools that you need to scale up. And I see behind you that you've kind of got one of the core images we referenced in scaling up, the image of a guy dragging an anchor almost through treacle. So what were the insights that you saw at the time that sort of said, yeah, actually, if you're going to be serious, you need to just sort of have the sort of scaling up methodology to continue to grow?
Yeah, so after I was successful at implementing the sort of EMyth methodology, it took a few years, like in total, and I reached quite a comfortable position where the company was working, I wasn't really required, and everything was fine. But as an entrepreneur, I felt kind of bored, and I just didn't feel right just sitting and having all the time available. And then we tried to grow, but each time we tried growing, we stumbled upon some obstacles. So we had to go back to where we were, and we basically plateaued. So I decided I need to do some sort of investigation research in terms of what business courses there are around. I do quite a lot of reading, so I came across the Scaling Up book. And then that's when I decided very quickly, okay, I have to find out more. So I decided to join the summit in Denver. And then, yeah, true. That's how we got to know each other, because I did ask a person at during dinner asking, well, I'm from England and I'm after a coach. And then straight away said, oh, you must meet Neil because he's the best. So yeah, that's how we got to meet.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I think one of the things that you talked about, and I think it's referenced in the Scaling Up book, there's almost values of death that you get to when you get to different levels in an organization, that you either plateau or you kind of go down a bit into another valley where there's challenges and all sorts of bear pits. So what would you describe sort of the barriers that you had to overcome in order to just sort of get moving again?
Well, without any question of doubt, we were very good at systems and procedures.
Yeah.
But the thing that I wasn't aware that we were lacking was the soft side of things. So understanding the values and basically our purpose, because I could feel that something was missing, but I didn't know what. We had the procedures, everything was working nicely, but there was lacking of, the foundation, as I probably should call it. And yeah, that's why working with you was so helpful, because we sort of got to reinvent ourselves and discover who we are and what we represent. And basically it means that no matter what we will be doing, that still describes who we are. And the other way of looking at it is that we would rather lose money than break our values.
Yeah.
And that is, now I understand the importance of it and how important it is to build a business around the core values and your purpose, and then also be very strict when recruiting people and deciding who stays on with you based on those values rather than just the things they know and they experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say there's sort of there's softer skills. I think a lot of us argue that it's really hard to get clarity on your core purpose and your core values. But let's reflect on that for a minute. What is your core purpose for your organization?
Well, our core purpose is to build a global conglomerate of companies famous for their service and reliability.
Yeah.
And we've been tested, especially now over COVID, whether that is our core purpose. And without any doubt, that is our core purpose. We'll always work towards providing not perfectionism, but we are aiming at the best possible reliable service, regardless of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So and then the values, we have 5 core values. The first one is perfect outcomes.
Yeah.
So it's a nice combination of 2 words, because they sort of the opposite, because it's either perfect or there's an outcome.
Yeah.
So that's why I love that play of words, and I always say it has to be 51% emphasis on the outcome, because it's actually better to do something even though it's not perfect than spend endless amount of time on perfect.
Yeah.
Next is respect. So that's, I guess, unnegotiable. Then it is simplicity. So we love simple solutions. It's and I could talk a lot about it. It provides clarity in the world. It's yeah, in the world of chaos, companies that work in a simple way, I don't know, like McDonald's and then many others, they are very easy to sort of well, they provide the stability that's lacking. It's also, and actually the one that I like most is the only constant is change. And it was also tested recently when the whole situation happened, because if we stuck to what we were doing, just Steelo, we probably would have been in much deeper trouble. But because we realized that actually this is the time to act, we managed to sort of pivot straight away.
Yeah. And I think having that clarity, and obviously I think Jim Collins talks about discovering your core values, and that's probably a really important word. How have your values served you over these last few challenging months?
Very well. I mean, they were our sort of benchmark. Obviously, in these challenging times, it's always a good moment to search around for the talent that becomes available. And it basically distills down to the values. And even in our recruitment videos, I openly say that it is the values that matter, not the sort of experience and education, because that comes later. If someone is switched on, has got a growth mindset, intelligent, but also like to have fun, then they are the people that we know that will fit our organization, regardless of their sort of experience.
Yeah. So we talked about our core purpose, we talked about the importance of core values. What about your core competencies? What are the things, I think we touched on it right at the beginning of this call, what are the sort of things that the real underlying strengths that you have across the organization?
Well, it will be probably, I'll say 2 things. One is reliability. So if something does not go to plan, the whole team gets really annoyed, and they really do everything possible to rectify it. And then the second thing is we are the masters of introducing procedures. So it's basically, once something does not work, we will then come up with scalable solutions. So not just patches, but actually system solutions that will prevent the same mistake from happening in the future.
Yeah. And I suppose underlying that is your absolute belief around lean thinking, understanding sort of also the theories of constraint. Let's pick up on lean thinking to start with, and how that's played a part in the growth of your organization.
Well, yeah, like you mentioned, I'm a big fan of lean and also theory of constraints. That's probably because I do a lot of orienteering. And with orienteering, you are in one place, your checkpoint's over there, and you just have to get there as fast as possible without the fat there.
Yeah.
And to me, each time I go orienteering, it reminds me of lean manufacturing, because the only thing that matters is the added value. And I always sort of mention within the company that the customer won't pay for us moving a beam 20 times around production area. The only thing they're paying for is for cutting the steel, for drilling it, for welding plates, and for painting. That's it. And we have to get to a ready-made product as quickly as possible. So that's the lean sort of thinking and getting to the final results ASAP. Next is the whole burden of keeping too much inventory and too many projects going on at the same time. So that sort of touches upon the theory of constraints, the drum buffer rope methodology, where we release only the amount of work that we can work on, and we can only take on more work or start releasing more work onto production floor once we finish those projects. Because in the past, we used to end up in a situation where, let's say 80% of the steel work for the next day was fabricated, but none of the projects was finished. So there was, let's say, 1 or 2 beams missing from each project. And that is terrible, because even though a lot of work has been done, the drivers can't leave and deliver any project. So that's why we sort of introduce the theory of constraints, where we have to go project by project, make sure 1 truck can leave, and then focus on the next truck, and so on.
Very good. Very good. I know it's something that we referenced in Eli Goldratt's great seminal book, The Goal, and where he discusses the theory of constraints. It's great to see. Not many people actually work with who actually not only know about it, but actually put it into practice.
Yeah, but you see, many people, as far as I'm aware, they stop on the book, The Goal, even though Goldratt's, I don't know, he's got probably 14 or so books. And people think that because he's providing a manufacturing example, that his methodology is limited to manufacturing. But then there's the next book called The Critical Chain, which is about project management. And that is actually how it all started, because Goldratt comes from an academic background, and he was shocked. Well, he started questioning, why are projects always late? And he started looking at it, and he realized that projects are late because people are trying to work out methodologies based on a perfect world.
Yeah.
Whereas we all know that the world is not perfect, and as he called it, Murphy pops up every now and then, or people fall ill, or someone doesn't turn up to work, or they've got a bad mood, or machines break down, and so on. And then he realized that actually you should adopt sort of the mathematical approach, and he references Lagrange equations and the global minimum and so on. So it's all sort of supported by science, but then the methodology is damn simple. I mean, I went to the United States for a 5-day course with one of his students, and my main question was, well, where are the equations? I mean, the book is nice, it's very simple, but where are the equations? Where do you actually put in all those data into the formula? And so he said, no, it's as simple as that. Just determine the bottleneck and then have all the remaining resources with built-in spare capacity, so that they never constrain the whole system. And yeah, that is a really game changer. I mean, we increased productivity by around 40% literally overnight just by introducing these concepts. And now obviously our production works in a very streamlined way, still using the same concepts. And also the drum is a great management automation tool, because like now we've introduced the drum, which is the reflection of our constraint, the vehicles we have, and the available slots.
Yeah.
So the reason why we introduced or chose the delivery or logistics as the bottleneck is because the definition of a bottleneck is that time lost on a bottleneck is time lost forever. So unlike manufacturing, we can always get the guys to stay longer, we can introduce a second shift and so on, but we can only deliver between 8 and 5. If we miss a delivery, well, then we have to take out a slot from the next day. That means we've lost throughput forever. Yeah. So by doing so, we then built a whole software around it, and the estimators, when dealing with a customer, they can actually look from the very end to the beginning, because they can look at when we have the first available slot, promise that delivery slot, and take an order today. So from the very beginning, the customer knows exactly when they're going to get it, and then everything's automated, because now the design department knows when they need to prepare the drawings for, and when we need to order the material for. Production basically fabricates it the day before it gets delivered. So it's really, really simple.
So a few months ago, we had March suddenly came along, and COVID-19 the strategies we put in place for the year ahead are kind of torn up and everything's like games. How did it affect you, and how did it affect the business, back in March, and what sort of actions did you have to take?
Well, to start with, I probably believed what probably most of us believed, is that it will be a temporary sort of shutdown, and after 3 weeks, we'll be all back to normal. And I even recorded a video showing 4 different graphs for different sectors. One was there will be a quick dip and back to normal, and people saying that airlines will be like that. Next will be that the demand will increase up, and then it will go down for some time and then level off, and that will be pasta and rice, because obviously people will stop piling. Then there was a one where it went down and then took ages to recover, and to me that will be probably construction. And the fourth one was where it started from the beginning, it went and it goes up and then levels off at a higher level than it started from, and that will be face masks and there will be PPE and so on. But now I know that the first graph is just obsolete. It did not happen. All of us are going to struggle on the long term.
Yeah.
So I realized that actually things might be worse. And then I watched a webinar with Vern, and he said, well, and I actually did record a video to say thank you to Vern for his sort of words of wisdom. But he said, well, 2 things. One, he said that if you haven't pivoted yet, you'll be probably out of business very soon. So it was like a wake-up call. And the second one was referencing Beck, the pen company, saying that they understood they're not good at pens or whatever they were doing. They're actually good at putting metal and plastic together. So that is, again, it was like a reminder of our core competencies and our values and who we are, regardless of what the world is doing. So then I set myself a task of, well, if we want to survive this whole thing, the best way is to end up employing more people during the crisis than before. So with all that sort of kind of thinking, it really forced me and my team to sort of think of what we could be doing next. So we spent some time observing other countries, especially China, watching YouTube videos and seeing how they have adapted to living with a virus. Also Japan and then the Far East, because they've always had some issues with SARS and MERS and the likes. And then I remember seeing a shot of a restaurant where there were these plastic screens. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So that was one of many things I had on my list. I'm quite lucky because my mom's a virologist. So whenever I had, say, thoughts, I just called her saying, Mom, what do you think about this and that? And the sort of science behind it. Because I was looking at mass production of face masks, but then I quickly realized that that is just not a viable option. I've also looked at manufacturing gloves, but that's because my sister's a chemist and her husband's also a chemist. So I quickly called them saying, hey guys, how easy is it to set up a whole production line of gloves and so on? And again, it was one of those things where, well, China's got so many factories, they might as well just add 2 or 3 more lines to cope with the demand rather than us starting from scratch. So then we distilled it down to the screens, and that is how Workshield was born. But then with Workshield, my passion there is because I like sharing my knowledge and experience with other business owners as well. And I know that many of them are in deep trouble now. And this, instead of me teaching them how to grow, because obviously there's no place for growth at the moment, unless very odd circumstances. And by providing those screens, we know that we are able to help them get back to business. And I honestly, each time we send out a package and I can see a box being packed, I'm like, okay, that's another business that will be ready to resume operations. And then that really brings a lot of sort of pride and then happiness.
Yeah, I think Vern also talked about the tool that you and I've used as well, the SWET tool, knowing what your core competencies are, your strengths, what are your inherent weaknesses, and then being able to spot the trends in the marketplace, and then what the core competencies towards those trends, and say, well, there's going to be a need for keeping people safe while they go back to work. So it feels like you've really adapted or taken that learning on board.
Yeah. And just to add with what you said, just so that people don't think that we are perfect, like you said, there are also weaknesses, and our weaknesses, surprisingly, is sales. We've been always rubbish at sales. And even here with this whole situation, we didn't think, how can we buy cheap screens and sell for more? We just instantly thought, how can we make it? So straight away, we just went straight back to thinking of how can we make stuff. And that is why we work with distributors and other sales oriented companies, because that is their core strength. So, and it works very well. So we're doing what we're good at, and others sell our products and making a margin on it.
No, I think that's a great point. Again, it is often difficult, isn't it, to reflect on things that you're not so good at. You know, we all like to think about what we're strong at and stuff like that, but there's a deep down thing, oh, we're good at everything. And actually, in reality, you know, there's things that you have as your blind spots. But recognizing that, as you've done there, and then making sure you've got the right partnerships around you. And how's it? So, how things been? You know, for that part of the business since you really started making these shields.
Well, surprisingly, we're very busy throughout both businesses. So the steel side has picked up, and we sort of back to pre-COVID levels, which is, I mean, I'm surprised myself. We still got a few people on furlough, but we've got new also people that have joined us. So sort of the same amount of people. We did learn that there were some sort of spare bodies, I would say, but it goes back to the theory of constraints. We are aware of the fact that we might have had a person or two more in each department, but that is so that department never becomes a bottleneck. So, so again, if someone goes on holidays, then we'll be experiencing a constraint in another department, which we don't want. So we'll be back to the normal levels very soon. And the plastic screens, I mean, that's in high demand at the moment. And also we were quite lucky in terms of sourcing materials, because when I first decided I'm going to have a go at plastics, the lead time was next day. A few days later, once we played a bit with the few sheets we received, and okay, we're going to order more. The lead time was like 1 week. And then 2 days later, I called again, and the lead time, I remember it was a Monday morning. In the morning, I called, the lead time was 3 weeks. And then by midday, it was already 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I realized that actually this will be a game of who's got this stock available. So we started sourcing from all over Europe. And luckily, we're in a position now where we are, well stocked, and many other companies that also started providing these screens, they basically do not have material available. So we're sort of in a privileged position now.
Yeah.
But that's only because we're really quick in our action. And also, without having the right team in place, we would have never been able to pull this off. Within literally a few days, and all in all, it took us 2 weeks to get a totally new company going, new branding, new name, new product range, everything, together with an online store and then all of that. So it was great team effort, and it was only possible because as a team we defined our core values, we call them qualities, and then the fact that we just love working together. And it's really positive looking forward, because now our focus is on M&As. So the same team that created Workshield, we've adapted of my style, which is the stand back thinking, where it now works. There are people running it and systems and so on. That's on business automation. So now the team is working behind the scenes on acquisitions, but we sort of allowed ourselves the time up to the end of July to get our heads around the whole situation. So we're reading a lot in terms of the Great Depression in the 30s. We're reading about the global economics, macroeconomics, how it all works, the current position of different countries. I also follow a lot of Ray Dalio, the co-founder of Bridgewater. And we want to understand the trends that will be happening in the future. Yeah. And it is said that manufacturing will be coming back to many countries. And obviously when manufacturing is coming, then that's like, wow, that's us. So apart from acquisitions, I'm actually got a secret large scale plan, which will be setting up a steel mill in the UK, but based on recycled materials, and maybe combine that with monomer production, because every plastic that is created later on comes from monomers. So I'm sort of educating myself around it, and obviously it will be a major investment, which will require investment partners. But if that is the trend, then I definitely want to be doing that. Will be a dream come true.
Yeah, no, it's spot on. And again, you know, we've been talking an awful lot about trends over the last 3 or 4 months, and the importance strategically of as an owner being able to step back and see those trends when everyone else may have their head stuck in the sand, or maybe caught up in the headlights with what the hell's happening right now. And I think, yeah, it's a great lesson for anybody to be able to, as a CEO, to step back and see what on earth is going on, and then being able to either pivot as you've done, or to see big opportunities ahead of you, that where the market's going. And we talked about the importance of education, and you and the team joined the Scaling Up Masters program at the beginning of 2019. Mike, what were the benefits for you and the team of joining the Scaling Up Masters program?
Well, there are quite a few of them. The ones that we've already touched upon was defining the core values and the called BHAG back then. I think Vern even himself now says, well, hold on with the BHAG, there are other things going on. But I still think that a well-defined BHAG doesn't change anyway. It's the same for us. We will be building a global conglomerate of companies famous for their service and reliability. And so that is, and I know for some it might just feel trivial. Oh yeah, it's just the values and so on. But no, that is actually so important. Then the other benefits was building a great team. It's the fact that you spend time together, like with our sessions, a full day, either in-house or at the sort of offices or the meeting training rooms in London. You get to know each other on a different level, not just work, but also privately, and just become good friends. Then we decided to go for one of the summits in California, which was also a great sort of team experience. And I'll focus basically on that soft side of things, because thanks to that, we managed to make decisions, quite risky decisions that we would never probably make before. One of them was like laying off a salesperson that joined our team as part of an acquisition of another business.
Yeah.
And on the outset, you think, well, yeah, this guy's great. But then the differences in perceiving the world and sort of like transparency and so on, just immediately, like, we could see that this person, no matter what, just won't fit our team. And we basically ejected that person. I must also admit that the COVID situation also sort of showed which members of the senior management team actually are part of the company. Yeah. Some have decided, well, actually fine, it's the government's paying for holidays and let's just go and enjoy it. Instead of thinking, well, actually, this is quite serious. How can we make sure that the company survives? Now, I'm not saying working under furlough scheme. It's just, well, thinking, watching news and just looking at what is happening, and then even touching base saying, well, what can we do to make sure we stay afloat? But it all goes down to the values and our purpose. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is. And like I mentioned to you many times, it takes someone special like you to dig deeper to then retrieve the values and purpose out from us. And I remember the situation where you use the why method. You kept asking questions, but why, and then suddenly you go down deeper and deeper and deeper until you reach the core. And then that's the, I'll say, the biggest benefit. And again, I can't emphasize how important it is to define those things.
Yeah, I think again, you've consistently talked about simplicity, how important that is to your values, but also I think we reference a lot that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication in anything, being able to do that. I think one of the tools we use is the one-page strategic plan, which on the outset is how can you get all your thinking down onto one page? But in that genius of that sort of simplicity, underneath it is a lot of complexity that allows you to do things. How have you gone about using the one-page strategic plan in your business? How has that benefited?
Well, it was an addition to what we introduced before because, like I said, I'm very good at simplifying things. Yeah. And many years ago, I was lacking a main KPI that will allow us to know exactly how we are performing. Obviously, whatever financial book you read or business book, they say that sales is the most important KPI. But the problem is that if the margins vary between your projects, then sales is useless because you might have 100 grand worth of sales in a month, but spend 70 grand on materials, whereas the running of the business might cost you 50 grand. So you're losing money. On the other hand, that same turnover could cost you in terms of materials 30 grand. So you are 20 grand in profit. So that's why I was not comfortable with it. And it took me over a year to come up with the right KPI. And we call them our X points, which is basically the contribution margin. Yeah. So that was our main KPI, and I've used that tool to scale up from probably around 5 people up to 40, over 40 now.
Yeah.
So even when we were working together with the X points, I mean, with the Onepage strategic plan, it was always our main focus was on the X points.
Yeah.
But then also the Onepage allows the whole team to understand what are the goals for the next quarter, for the next year, and also get people accountable for achieving those results. Yeah. So then people are divided into their own sort of targets for the next month and quarter, and then by meeting up and discussing it, everyone sort of has to explain, well, whether they've achieved it or not, and if they haven't, they have to say what will be done to make sure we not only achieve the appointment but make over the losses from the previous month.
Yeah. If someone came up to you as thinking about joining the Masters program, you know, we're going to be running many more over the years. What would you be saying to them about, you know, whether they should join it or not? What would be the benefits for them?
Oh, without any doubt, they should join it. I mean, there's no question about that. And I'm not because I've got a percentage or anything like that from Neil. It's far from it. So open-heartedly, that's what I know is beneficial to business owners if they want to reach the next level. And without the values, without the purpose, without the Onepage strategic plan, without getting everything distilled into one place, you just can't think of growing your business. So yeah, it's I don't know how to explain it, but it's just without this, you probably won't be able to grow your business further. You'll be stuck, you'll be plateauing, you'll be probably miserable because it's a terrible place to be in for any entrepreneur. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely the next stage if you want to sort of continue growth.
Yeah. And Michael, you're not just an entrepreneur, but your actual passion as well is for helping others, you know, through their business transformational process. And as you mentioned, you know, you've got this whole philosophy around stand back and keep making sure you know, as an entrepreneur, just as Michael Gerber teaches us in the EMyth, getting out of the way, you've got a business that ultimately runs without you. Tell us a bit more about why you think like coaching is important to you and why you are passionate about helping others on their transformational journey.
Well, it's like with a business where you define the values and the core or purpose, the same as with every human being. And this is something I've learned thanks to EMyth, where you have to understand what are your strengths and weaknesses. And the two things that definitely I am good at is simplicity. So whenever there's something complicated, I love that challenge of making it simple. Then I've got others like transparency and enjoying the outdoors. So that's also very important. Yeah. I go out and I charge batteries in the woods and mountains. But then the fourth of my strengths is helping achievers. And when I started off, I wrote down helping others. But then I thought, well, actually, is that true? If someone's begging for money, will I throw them money? No. If someone's, I don't know, jobless because they're lazy, will I help them? No. So I realized actually it's helping achievers. So whenever I come across someone who wants to achieve more in life, they're ambitious, for some reason, I just really want to support them. And one example is one of our sales people for Workshield. He's got a side business running and I'm so passionate. I'm already pointing him in the right direction, telling him what books to read, and I'm asking him questions. Where can I help you? What's your bottleneck now? And so on. So it just naturally sort of, it's part of me. And stand back, yeah, that's the, so I would say stage before scaling up. If someone wants to scale up as an entrepreneur, they have to have the freedom in terms of time to scale up. Like I described in the very beginning, people tend to grow business around them, and it's sometimes a very innocent sentence saying, well, if you don't know anything, just ask me. And suddenly you define the position of a leader and follower instead of leader, like scaling up is an advocate for. And then basically you become bombarded by everyone because you told them that you are the person that is the wisest in the world and you know everything. Yeah. And that is terrible. I mean, that's just terrible for every business owner. And that's why I sort of formed my sort of school, I would say, at Stand Back, which means basically you have to move yourself outside of the company so the company works on itself. It doesn't mean you're free to run away. Far from it. You are the spirit of the company, but just the day-to-day, the nitty-gritty of running the business should not be part of your job. And I always also confirm it to doctors, because my parents are both doctors, And doctors, they fly around the world and attend different congresses and seminars, and they have to read a lot of literature to stay on top of their game.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a doctor and run a private clinic, then suddenly you have to do both. You have to fly to all the medical congresses, but also you have to learn how to grow a business. And in my opinion, that is impossible. You just can't spread yourself thin. So you have to decide whether you want to be a specialist or a business owner. And if you are a business owner, well, then your job is to learn exactly as doctors do, vets, engineers, and so on, to stay on top of your game. You have to attend seminars, summits, coaching programs, and it's often referred to, and I guess Vern says the same, as sportsmen. Every top elite has got a coach, not because the coach is better than they are, it's just that the coach will point you in the right direction, so show your weaknesses and also strengths. Yeah. So without a coach, it's basically impossible. And also, maybe not impossible, but you make it a much shorter and easier journey. You probably would be able to get to the same conclusions, but after years and years of failures and frustration. But with a coach, you basically, it's like kind of getting a hand and just someone pulling you through boggy grounds.
Yeah, it's such an important point you make there. I think a lot of people in business, because they don't know anybody, any of their peer group have got a coach, kind of push back and say, look, I'm doing okay. Why would I need a coach? But actually, rightly say, all the great sportsmen, the great tennis players, golfers, footballers, whatever, they'll all have a coach. Probably have 3 or 4 coaches: fitness coach, diet coach, skills coach, and whatever. And I think when you point that out, it's the very best of the world, the achievers, that have coaches that you then actually legitimize it for others. But it's probably still a big challenge to help more people recognize the benefits that you talk to there.
Yeah, and the same refers to every one of us. I mean, even if you go to the gym, it's better to have a coach, not every single session, but once a week or so, because they will say, well, actually, if you straighten your back by that much, you won't cause all that damage. And also, like with me, with orienteering, I mean, I also have a coach for orienteering, not because I want to be the world champion. It's just that he just gives me some ideas, and it's just much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think as golfers, I can't remember if it's Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy said, look, the thing is, in golf, you can't see your own swing. You can't see it. You need others to be able to point out to you those little things. If you just made that adjustment, that will just make you so much better. And then you're just being able to go and practice it and practice that around that. So
yeah, and especially the scaling up course or methodology. I mean, the work that Vern's done is just extraordinary, because it's not that it's Vern that knows everything. He actually works with hundreds of other authors who are always at the top of the new sort of development in the business world, and he invites them to sort of speak on his behalf. And I think that is the sort of key to success in terms of scaling up, is that it's not just one person speaking, it's the main sort of think tanks in the world.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, talking about books and stuff like that, and understanding you're writing a book at the moment with, is it the co-author of Theories of Constraints, Jeff Cox?
The Goal, yes.
Yeah. How's that going for you?
Yeah, we're roughly halfway through. It's getting on well. The story is quite interesting. It starts with a bang. As you know, I wasn't comfortable with the bang, but I'll just leave it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is about the stand back methodology, which is just showing people that your business has to work without you, and you have to choose whether you are a specialist or a business owner. If you're a business owner, well, then you have to continue to grow through different courses.
Yeah.
Scaling up.
Yeah, and it's good to see you've got a full bookshelf behind you. What are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading The Great Depression.
Yeah.
Which is about the 30s, and I quite like. It's actually one member of our senior management team spotted that, because the front cover, I don't have it in this office because it's in the other units there where Workshield is, but it shows long queues on the streets, I think it was of New York. And he actually realized that the same is happening now. It's just that we can't see the queues because the queues are virtual. People lining up to get the 80% furloughing, they're lining up to get all the grants and so on. But the same thing is happening. We just can't see it.
Yeah.
And that is why it's like wow, okay, well, actually, yeah, that is very true. And like I said, I'm trying to work out together with the team the trends for the following probably decade or even more. And by going back in history, we're trying to sort of relate that to what's happening here. And as a senior management team, we meet up weekly for around 1.5 hours only for the purpose of thinking of what is the future ahead of us. And we sort of hand out homework to each other. So like for next week, every person from the senior management team has to think about different behaviors in the future.
Yeah.
How will IT change? How will personal relationships change? How will interacting in business change? And so on. Because to me, I see, if we go into details, on one hand, definitely everything is going online. But on the other hand, online works only if the 5G or 4G masts are working. If someone switches that off, then what happens to all these businesses? And suddenly it becomes a massive, massive threat for the whole IT world. And also another sort of way of looking at it is that, yes, we can meet online, we can meet through Zoom like we're doing now, but we are social beings. We actually like to meet up with each other. And how is that going to change? Because on one hand, yes, there's definitely a rise in online meetings, but I think that's unsustainable. Another thing is productivity when working from home. I mean, yes, you can work from home, but there's nothing like being in an office with children and the fridge available. It's just totally different efficiency, let alone the atmosphere. And that's what I love about the sort of core values and the purpose, where you get like-minded people around you. It's just a beauty. It's just fantastic getting together at work. Yeah. We joke, but on the other hand, we work very hard. And that is obviously non-existent if we're all working remotely. Some of us are working remotely because of various circumstances, but again, I still think that an office is a great environment to be in. It could be that the future will allow people to work 2-3 days from home, but then still be in the office. But there'll be a massive shift in how we do business and behavior.
Yeah, and I think again the way you set up from when I came working with you, having the canteen there, that's not just the management team, but everybody, from the workers and the fabricators, everyone is coming together to eat bread together and to share what's going on in the business and feel part of that organization.
Well, now we separated because we had to adapt the training, the seminar room into our canteen, so everyone's at least 2 meters away.
But that approach that you have, that's so important right now. What are the other key books that you call out if anyone was watching this sort of books that you recommend? Obviously, we talked about EMyth, we talked about scaling up and the goal. What are the sort of the other sort of top 3 or 4 books that you absolutely call out?
Well, I always go back to the basics, and the most basic book that I always recommend to anyone is Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Yes.
That is absolutely the sort of foundation book. The next one I would say is Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yeah.
That is obviously a great book about creating opportunities for yourselves rather than competing with others in the red ocean. Other books, well, so many of them. I would then add Principles, Ray Dalio. It's a massive black book, looks like a Bible for a reason, I guess. It's 500 pages long, but it's really it's a great approach. I mean, Ray Dalio in himself is one of my gurus, and the few takeaways from his book, well, the one that I like most is that if you are experiencing pain, never give up, because that's the way the world is built. For the world to expose you a gem, you have to go through pain.
Yeah.
And then that single thought is like, wow, it's so powerful.
I guess
those are
for some of us who are going through pain, is to learn how to use that to your advantage, to be able to stretch yourself, to be able to have new thinking where others might just chuck the towel in or find it too difficult. Great point.
Yeah. And then probably, obviously, on top of the books that you mentioned, I'll probably add the Lean Startup.
Yes.
Which is, that's the masterpiece in terms of being very agile and just pivoting as you go and validating at every stage rather than having a big master plan and failing at the end. So we also adopt a lot of that methodology in terms of MVP, which is minimum viable product. Do whatever's necessary to validate the next stage and then continue.
Yeah, no, I think that will be an integral part of coaching over the probably coming months and years. I think we're all going to have to be that much more agile, that much more fleet of foot. Just, I think, like you have that sailing boat, just making sure that you're adapting the rudder, the tiller, to make sure that you're capturing the optimum amount of win, so your productivity is as high as it can be. So no, I think just one final question. Just going back to your values, and the importance you put in embracing a culture of both recognition and thanks. And I think that is made up, one, the video that you sent to them, which is very much an attitude of gratitude, and to do that, and it's something that you live day in, day out. Whenever we are having coaching sessions together, always remember the pains you took to make sure you thanked everyone, you thanked me, and that's something that you can actually talk about having a value, but actually more importantly living it. Why is this notion of both recognition and thanks so important to you?
Well, we did discuss it because you actually pointed out. I never thought about it, but that comes from my upbringing. My parents basically taught me to be thankful to others, and then that's the way I always used to be. And then after our telephone conversation one day, I just thought, well, actually, even at primary school, I remember I just thanked the teachers. I just thanked people around, not because I wanted to bite into their world or anything like that. It just was natural that someone put in some effort and I could benefit from it. Then later on, because obviously there are some, maybe not books around it, but there's lots around it that talks about it, and people don't recognize that a simple thank you is so powerful. It doesn't cost you anything if you just verbally say thank you. Even if you send a thank you letter, it's just £2 together with the stamp, but it is so powerful, and like I said, it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, no, this attitude of gratitude, I think, will serve everyone really well. And we're dealing with humans right now, and just letting people know that you're thinking about them, and it's just taking that time out, just to, as you say, simple thank you so much for stepping up or recognizing people. That is one of our basic human emotions. So, Michael, just so many thanks for joining us today for a catch-up call. Fascinating learning about sort of your business growth over years. In fact, I think we can, all of us, learn the importance of, if you're going to grow a business, it's absolutely fundamental that you are learning the whole time. I think that will set you apart, is this hunger to be the best you can be every single day, to be better than you were yesterday. And then you can't, there's no shortcut, I don't think. Okay, you can get involved in coaching, absolutely, and doing that, but it's hard. And making sure that you are reading, going on courses, workshops, webinars, summits, those sort of things are what's characterized you, and I'm sure allowing you to achieve the success you have now, but also more importantly the future. So once again, thank you very much.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll just add that what you were referencing was that guy over there. My team saw this photo, and me myself in one of Vern's presentations. You can't buy it, but my team actually ordered it to be printed 3D, and it basically shows what it's like to run in business. You've got an anchor behind you to pull it, but in times like with COVID, the whole Workshield thing, we're laughing that we actually took the anchor and now it's our flag, and we're just running with the flag upright. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity for sharing this, and I hope it will help other business owners.